Hello, everyone, and welcome aboard to Animal Advocates Radio Voices Carry for Animals number 479 shows and counting this evening. I want to welcome all you new listeners aboard. Hope you enjoy the show and keep coming back and spreading the word. I'm going to go over a couple things here before I do get the show started this evening. I want to. My name is Debbie Dahmer, aka Mama Bear, and I love being on the air to help these animals out in need and distress. And it takes all of us to make it happen. Okay, so we all have to work together, be super team players, and them changes being made because that's what it takes. I can't do it alone. I do my best, but hey, the great team players that I do have, and so I'm so appreciative of them and so glad, and it makes me grow stronger and inspired more. But my show is on the my voices carry for animals.com. Okay, and you can subscribe free, and after each show it gets loaded up, and it'll be published on there, and you can listen right from my website, voicescarryforanimals.com. Also, there is a podcast player on there, and go to that page, and it will play the last five shows. Okay, so um, well, you got to check it out and spread the word, and you can share from each promo post at the bottom to all the social media. And there's icons on there. I see Mama Cat is in the chat room, everyone. Welcome, Mama Cat. So glad to see you again. Love all your support and your ongoing. I mean, it is teamwork here. But anyway, I'm going to go over just some more couple things. I'm trying to wait for my guests to come in. I'm still a newbie at this, and so is everybody else, everyone. So we have to, work together and work this out because it won't, it doesn't happen overnight. Okay, so we're going to do this, make it happen. Um, anyway, I want to let everyone know out there that this show, okay, if you're on the web listening in and you want to interact in this live chat room on Podbean podcast and player app, it's a free download, okay? So you can go to either Google Play or Apple Store and download it from there. And also follow Voices Carry for Animals podcast. If you're on also on the web, and it's easy, just take some time, follow the instructions that I'm giving, and just go to Voices Carry for Animals podbean.com. Okay, and that's where you're going to follow and subscribe to my podcast. And then after that, you will be alerted in your on your phone that there is a show starting up, a live cast. Click join us, and you can join us in the chat room. This chat room is awesome, everyone, and I love it. So this Podbean is really rocking, and Podbean rocks. Okay, so please spread the word out there because I've had some great guests and all going. I mean, 479 shows this evening, and that is just wonderful. Going to keep going here, and what I'm doing here is, trying to get more people out there to and animal advocates to more action takers. That is the key, okay? Because we cannot do this alone, okay? So what we got to do is work together and keep it up because these animals need our help from all angles. Okay, so we have to, learn to, work together well and also, be that team player because that's what it takes, to see the victories. And I'm trying to get in contact with my guest here. Just kind of be patient here. I do have some great news that on player.fm, I did a search on Voices Carry for Animals podcast, and it came up that one of the top best podcasts of 2025. And this is just, I'm doing the happy dance, everyone. And so, keep it up. I want to see that happen more after this show is published. That it will be published or downloaded and published after this show on 23 other podcast websites. Okay, this is just so inspiring. And also two YouTube channels. If you could head there on YouTube and Voices Carry for Animals podcast. Subscribe free. All the shows will be downloaded to there, and also Animal Advocates Radio podcast. Okay, so subscribe there also. That used to be all about animals radio podcast channel, and John Bowden, they closed up and transferred it over to Animal Advocates Radio, which I'm going to miss him. I hate to see him go, but at least all his 78 videos are on there. Okay, so um, anyway, so please visit that in my website. And also on Facebook, I have the Voices Carry for Animals podcast page, and you can like and follow that also. There's a group, Voices Carry for Animals. We got the group there going, and animals on death row, and there's promos, there's petitions, and everything. So, what we do is go ahead and get the show rolling. Watchdog Mary is in the live chat room. Watchdog Mary, can you send me an invitation? Okay, hold on one second. I'm gonna get you connected here, okay, and see what's going on. I got Mama Cat coming in. And this is great. Okay, you're live and on there. That's Mama Cat. Watchdog Mary, can you send me an invitation also in the lower right hand corner under the phone icon or the microphone icon and alert me? Can you hear me? Mama Cat, you're there.
I hear ya.
Okay. What I'm going to do is mute you out right now. I'm trying to get Watchdog Mary in, okay? And so go ahead and watch Dog Mary and go ahead and click the at the bottom of the screen of your phone and click it again because it's going to alert me you want to come on air. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Can you click it again? Because it goes by so fast here. And everyone, welcome to the chat room here. This is coming live from the Podbean, podcast and app. Okay. Here we go. Okay, Watchdog Mary, welcome aboard.
There you go.
Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
eh, yes, I can. Welcome back,
Oh my
Watchdog Mary.
goodness, thank you. And technology, it's smarter than I am.
It is. You should see me on this thing. I mean, it's something else.
Oh
you
my
know,
goodness.
it is like wow. Because Blog Talk Radio, you had a calling number, and they didn't have an app. So I was almost on there 10.5 years. And so now that they closed down January 31st, everyone that doesn't know, I started this podcast up February the 20th. So I'm kind of still a newbie at this and still learning a lot. I mean, there is a lot of features on here. So this is great, but welcome back. This is so wonderful. So just keep everything, on that way. Next time you come on air, just you can just join us. This is so awesome. It'll let you know the show is starting up. Click to join everyone, and then you're in the chat room. Okay, the live chat room, and you can interact with other listeners, the guests, the callers, and this is just wonderful. But go ahead, Watchdog Mary. Tell them a little, refresh their memory and how you got started. We'll have another great show tonight, everyone. Go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back. I really appreciate it. So, I'm an investigative journalist and I write about animals. I also volunteer very heavily in animal rescue. So, I'm very familiar. I'm in the trenches as well, so to speak. And so, this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. And I have my own rescue dogs, of course, and they are their own stories that I really need to. Oops, is something gone amiss?
That was my
I just heard a
phone.
ringing. Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. I wanted to make sure that wasn't mine. So yeah, my rescue dogs could make their own podcast as well. They're hilarious. But tonight I want to talk to you about an ongoing crisis in animal shelters across the country right now. And shelters are taking in some of the highest numbers of animals that have happened in the past few years. And a lot of animal rescue groups and some big nationwide, rescue groups like Best Friends and even the San Diego Humane Society is another group that I've talked to, says that there is definitely a nationwide animal shelter crisis right now. Even in states that, aren't some of the typical states that euthanize a lot of animals, like Texas, for example, shelters in the Lone Star State euthanize the most numbers of dogs and have so for years. And a lot of southern states share in those very depressing and dank stats. But even shelters in the Northeast and in the Pacific Northwest, in the upper Midwest, places that you usually don't see a lot of adoptable animals in shelters, they're filling up as well, especially with dogs. This crisis seems to be really affecting a lot of dogs. The last I checked, cats were being saved a little bit more. Of course, we have Mama Cat on here who can talk to us later about that, about all the cat worlds and everything that's going on there. But a lot of shelters are bursting at the seams, and it's kind of been a perfect storm of sorts, unfortunately. The San Diego Humane Society, for example, says that they have a large amount of dogs who are coming in who are strays and not being picked up by their owners. Best Friends Animal Society says that more than 207,000 adoptable dogs were euthanized in 2023. That's some of the latest statistics that they have. Everyone's over capacity. Some shelters have lines of people stretching down the block to surrender their dogs. Other facilities are so full, they're turning animals away. There are places in Texas, I know, where someone might call and say, "Hi, animal control, I've found a stray dog, I've found a puppy," and the shelter will say, "We are just so full, we can't take them right now." So it's just really depressing. And a lot of people, I don't think, know about this. I don't think a large majority of the public at large realize this crisis is going on. And experts all have theories about why this is happening. There's the rising cost of dog food, pet supplies, veterinary care, the housing crisis, a lack of pet friendly rental homes, and even families who adopted pandemic pups and now have to go back to the office and don't have time for a dog. And on top of all of that, this is kind of what makes it the perfect storm. Adoption rates are plummeting. Rescue groups and shelters are seeing less people apply to adopt dogs. They're getting less applications. And when adoptions are slow, shelters fill up. According to Best Friends in 2023, nearly 2.5 million dogs in the United States ended up in animal shelters. That's some of the highest numbers in the past few years. And what's really sad and really tough too is some shelters are really struggling because they're having to unnecessarily euthanize dogs and cats on a regular basis due to that lack of space. And that, for some shelter employees, that's a really tough decision. And shelters it's really terrible when shelters have to euthanize for space reasons. There's a lot of ways that shelters can try to improve that, and by getting a foster program up and running, and the no kill advocacy group and Best Friends and American Pets Alive and Austin Pets Alive all have roadmaps for how to kind of help shelters see outside the box and figure out different ways to kind of handle animal control. And there are ways, I want to talk about two things next. There are ways that you, anybody listening to this, can help with this animal shelter crisis. And there's also ways that you can kind of figure out how your own local community shelter and animal control are doing these days. You kind of have to be a little bit of a pet detective, but there's definitely ways, and there's public records law that makes information accessible. But I want to move on to those two subjects next. But before I do, I kind of want to stop and see if you have any questions or comments, or if anybody out there wants to add anything.
Okay, if anybody in the live chat room wants to ask Watchdog Mary, Watchdog Mary is awesome. She's been on the show so many times, everyone, and she just out there working hard. I mean, she has won what was it, 17 Grammys before Watchdog Mary? Um,
17 Emmys.
oh
You do
wow.
not want me to sing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got
That
that
is
messed up.
something that is an award I will never win.
I will nominate you.
Please.
I don't know what would buy my Grammys, but I mean, you have been incredible out there. I mean, just doing everything and just, making this world a better place for all the animals. And but if anybody wants to ask her any questions, they're in the right hand corner of your phone or iPad or laptop. There's a microphone icon or a phone icon. Just press it to alert me you want to come on air and you have questions. Okay. So, and we're going to be, having another great show this Emmy. So if there's anything in your mind or anything, just, even put in the chat room. We'll pick it up there if you have any questions. Because if you have a laptop or iPad or, a tablet, to ask questions from the app, you have to have headphones or earbuds with a mic to, come on board and speak to the guest, okay? And just keep that in mind because some of them, it's a lot to explain on this new podcast we're at Watchdog Mary. It's so much modern technology and features, and I'm probably still don't know everything yet, but what you're doing out there can't thank you enough, and I know you've been on this show, Voices Carry for Animals, for like 5 times, and this is the sixth, and I didn't even count back when I was on TS Radio Network with Marty Oakley. And that's something. So we got to keep going here and keep these shows alive and keep, our attention and making this world a better place for all the animals in need and distress because they so well deserve it. These shelters are filling, they're all over, crowded. They're putting down million what a year of healthy adoptable animals because of overcrowding. We got to do better here because these animals don't stand a chance, everyone. And there's some of them that only get 2, 3, 4 days to get to, rescued or adopted, and it's not fair. And they don't stand a chance without us. So we have to be their voices and we have to be loud voices, okay? And I mean, just with dignity and respect, but please adopt, don't shop, and spay and neuter your pets. We have to get this under control because this stuff has been going on year after year, decade after decade. I've had many shows on it, and then they're heartbreaking. They're sad, so and in the shelters like Watchdog Mary was talking about, be a pet detective nearby, be a positive impact, be a watchdog for that community, because if we turn our heads that means the problems is going to get worse, right, Watchdog Mary? I mean, we can't give up, and it's so sad what's going on, and with the the inflation, how high it is, vet bills are higher, the surgery bills, the food. I mean, and this not only including that, it's the human side too. The food, the gas, the rent, the mortgages, homeowners insurance, property taxes. Something's got to give somewhere. I mean, this is just. I mean, and I've read all over the internet, Watchdog Mary, that so these animal shelters are overcrowding. Also, because people are turning in their pets because they can't afford them anymore. And that's a sad part. So
Yeah,
we
why
have
don't
something's
we
got to give. Something's got to give.
Yeah, yeah. And why don't we talk a little bit about how people can kind of figure out what's going on in their community? I mean,
Yes,
if you're listening right now, do you know what goes on in your community shelter? Do you know how many dogs and cats are adopted out each year, returned to their owners, euthanized? Do you know what the conditions are like? So it's vital for you to find out, because if you don't inquire or if you don't visit, you may have no idea that there could be animals there that need your help, or there's a problem right in your local neighborhood. So I want to talk to you about here's how you can be a pet detective. So in the United States, there are public records laws. There's a national law. Every state has their own version of, they call them FOIA, or Freedom of Information Act requests, public records requests. But anybody can make a public records request. You don't need to be an attorney. Sometimes, city or town or county officials might make this sound scary, like you need to be a lawyer or a journalist, but you don't. Each state has different laws, but essentially, all you do is type out a relatively simple request. You find out who runs the animal control shelter in your neck of the woods. Is it the police department? Is it the health department? Does animal control have its own department? So you find out who's in charge first. And then you find out how to make a public records request. And a lot of larger cities and towns and counties now, and even smaller ones, have portals where you can just go on the city's website, for example, and there's, make a public records request and you can submit it. You can always call the agency and say, hey, how do I make a public records request? But all you have to do is just put in a simple request. You don't have to make it fancy. You don't have to cite, the law. You just say, dear whatever the, agency is, this is a request. This is a public records request. And then you just ask some questions like, how many animals were euthanized? How many animals were adopted and rescued? You make you can do it by year, like for the last 3 years, and you can even break it out. How many dogs were came into your shelter? How many cats came into your shelter? And then what were the outcomes? What are the numbers that were returned to owners? What were the numbers of euthanization? And you can ask why. How many were transferred to rescue groups? So if you can kind of find this out and look at the numbers, you're going to kind of see if there's if the local community shelter is doing a good job, or maybe they need some help. There are some national groups like Best Friends, like Pets Alive, like the No Kill advocacy centers that, says look for a 90 to 95% live release rate, meaning they're not killed. Another way of looking at this is if you do see, numbers of animals that have been euthanized, ask why. Were they sick? Were they unable to be rehabilitated? It's basically, you want to see, is your shelter making decisions, euthanasia decisions, because of space reasons? situations because of crowding. Are they overcrowded and they're having to kill animals to make space for more? That is where something is a problem. If they say we euthanized these two dogs because they were very old and sick and suffering and had cancer. Some pet parents unfortunately do bring in very old and elderly dogs to shelters to have them euthanized. And so sometimes those are reflected in the numbers, but that's why you want to ask the questions. And you know what? There's a very friendly way to start to do this is, you can tell them this does not have to be an adversarial situation. You can talk to your local shelter and say, hey, I love animals. I'd love to see what challenges are you facing? What help could you use right now? What are some of the numbers of animals that you're taking in and what are the outcomes? So you can make this very nice and in a very friendly type of situation that comes from your heart, that comes from a place of concern. This does not have to be a wave the red flag adversarial situation, at least to begin with. I'm not saying that sometimes, unfortunately, these situations do go down that road, but I would start, with the old adage of you're going to catch more flies with honey than you do vinegar. Be nice about this because you might run into a very honest animal control officer, let's say, that says, you know what, we are really in a bind. We're taking in a lot of dogs or we're picking up a lot of strays and no one's claiming them, that kind of thing. And so you might want to say, okay, how can I help? So there's a lot of ways that you can help with the animal shelter crisis and help, just your local community shelter. Because I tell you what, there's a lot of nationwide programs out there, but this really is something that is handled on the local level. When you hear the stats that, there were more than 207,000, 100,000 dogs euthanized in 2023, those are all the stats of local shelters who are working with different organizations to report the numbers. So any change in animal control and animal welfare usually starts on the local level. And here's just a few ways that you can get involved trying to help dogs in shelters in your community. First of all, just like I was saying, volunteer. Find out what challenges your local shelter has and see where they can need help. And even try to find places that they may not even realize they need help. And here's some ideas. There's many potential roles for volunteers at many shelters. There's walking dogs, cleaning kennels. And those are very key roles, socializing the dogs as well. So you can kind of see how they do with other dogs, how they do with people. So then it's just not like, a lot of animal control facilities and shelters are so overwhelmed. They get a dog in and they assign them an ID number. Their dog 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They put them in a kennel. And if somebody inquires about them, like, how are they with other dogs? How are they with people? Sometimes the shelters are like, we are just so crowded and busy. We don't know. And so, that is potentially losing out on a potential adopter. Or a rescue group often makes those same kinds of inquiries. Some of the rescue groups are foster based. So they have to ask these questions, how are they with people? How are they with other dogs? Because, you don't want to send a dog that is, biting people to a foster home because, as a rescue group, that's a potential liability. So some of the things that you can offer to do or even round up people in your community, you'd be surprised how many people will answer the call in a community to help animals. You can take cute pictures of the dogs and cute videos, bring them out into the play yard, see how they are with the other dogs, and then help write adoption bios for these dogs. Help write social media posts that will that can tell you some facts about the dogs. I mean, many of us, I'm sure, love animals, and we've all seen those adoption posts that go viral that are hilarious. They need creative people to help describe the animals. If you volunteer at the shelter and you work with the dogs, having someone, one-on-one to talk to adopters to tell them about the dog is great. Like, yes, I have been volunteering and 3 days a week I walk Spot. Let me talk to you about him. He's great. He pulls a little bit on a leash, but, he's making progress with that. He's super friendly with the other dogs. So things like that, if, a rescue group or a potential adopter can speak to someone that has had hands-on with a dog. That's really, really important. Even having somebody who works at the shelter and talks to people that come in that can tell them about what the process is to adopt a dog, or perhaps they want to foster, and that can just kind of be the frontline communication to make it, a friendly kind of atmosphere. And the same, another job that you don't even have to go to the shelter. If you think, oh, I can't, there's some people that will say, oh my gosh, I can't go to a shelter. It's just so sad, or I just don't have the time. Well, nowadays, everyone spends so much time on social media. People know, especially young people, how to make the cute videos and reels and things like that. If you're a social media whiz, you can use your skills to save lives. Shelters and rescues need volunteers to make cute videos and posts of dogs. Even, sharing an adoption profile on your social media pages might reach a different audience that, than the shelter has, and end with an adoption. Or you can even say, share the adoption bios on your neighborhood groups. There's the pages like Nextdoor, or there's lots of Facebook neighborhood groups and that kind of thing. Somebody might see that and think, oh my gosh, that is that's the dog for me. Or, oh my gosh, my next door neighbor just lost their dog. I know they're looking, that kind of thing. You can also volunteer for a rescue group. And, every dog that a rescue group, or cat, every animal that a rescue group takes out of a shelter and puts either in their facility or gives them, they're in a foster home, that makes room in an animal control facility shelter. That opens up a kennel. So if a community is facing having to euthanize for space reasons, every animal that is transferred out to a foster home, to a rescue group, to a rescue group's foster home, or is adopted, that means that frees up space in a shelter. So you can also help with animals by volunteering for a rescue. And you can, they need some of the same jobs. They definitely need people to help make social media posts and helping to write bios, working with fosters, getting that information, that kind of thing. But there's also other tasks that you can do if you volunteer for a rescue. For example, they need adoption coordinators, and that's a very popular rescue and also even shelter role. But they're matchmakers who work with adopters to pair them with a dog that hopefully is a match made in heaven and they fall in love with, or a cat, or, there's rescues that have birds and rabbits and, everything under the sun. So whatever animal it is, or they are, that, they kind of work, they go through a person's application, hopefully the shelters and rescue groups have application processes, and they kind of say like, okay, they live in an apartment and they want a cat, or they have a huge fenced in backyard, so they want a huge dog, that kind of thing. And so those are definitely roles that you don't have to go into a shelter to do. A big way to help save animals is also by fostering. And I wrote an article recently, and I interviewed an amazing couple in Austin, Texas, Amy and Aaron Gelfand. And they have, this is a few months ago, but they have given a temporary home. They have fostered more than 552 dogs in need. So they live in a community where a lot of the surrounding shelters do euthanize for space reasons. And once they learned about the problem, they have not stopped fostering. So that means by fostering, giving that temporary home to the animal, they've saved that many lives. And a lot of them, they specialize in saving pregnant dogs now as well. So that's they have saved way more than that because of all the puppies that have been born in their care. But that is definitely one way to help. And they told me in the article that I wrote that if they didn't foster, another 40 to 70 puppies would die every year because that is what comes through their house in an average year. Texas shelters are always in crisis. And a lot of people I've talked to, so many people over the years that say, like, oh, I couldn't foster. I would get so attached to the animal. And, let's talk about this a little bit because fosters are so key. So fostering can be like for an hour, for a weekend, for a week, or it could be months long. Many shelters and rescues pay for all the dog's veterinary care and supplies. And you help by fostering that dog, by letting them live with you on a temporary basis, really helps learn so much about a dog that they can observe in a shelter, because the shelter is so unnatural for them, and there's the smells and the barking and the cries, and a dogs and cats and animals sometimes shut down in shelters because they're scared, or they just got dropped off there by their families and they're confused and they're heartbroken. So you don't really sometimes see the true animal's personality in a shelter. I can't even imagine my dogs would flip out if they were in a shelter. You definitely wouldn't see, what their real personality is like. So, when you foster an animal, you get them in your house and they're able to decompress and you really see the true personality. A lot of things of what I have seen in shelters too, I mean, with foster homes too, is you might walk the dog in your neighborhood and your neighbor falls in love with the dog and adopts them. That has happened many, many times. And so there's that part, the adoption part. The people often say, "Oh, I can't foster. I can't imagine saying goodbye to a foster dog." And that often keeps people from fostering animals. They worry they would be attached and they would be absolutely heartbroken when the animal left. So let's talk about that a little bit. Many rescues do allow you to adopt your foster animal. But I have seen so many cases where if someone else adopts your foster, for you, the foster, that does not mean that you have to say, farewell forever. The Gelfans, the couple I was just talking about, they created a private social media page and they stay in touch with all of their adopters. People are sharing pictures and videos and heartwarming stories about how much the dogs mean to them. And they are so thankful this couple played such a vital role in saving their dogs' lives. My two dogs that I have now, they both came from high kill shelters in Texas. They both lived with fosters. I am still in touch with the fosters. They are welcome to visit at any time. We're all on social media together. They are seeing constant updates. And me personally, I am so, so grateful because these fosters literally saved my dogs' lives. And these dogs mean so much to me and my family that, I couldn't imagine life without them. So if it weren't for these life-saving people, who were these lifelines to my dogs, I wouldn't have these incredible animals. And so you can still love them and be happy when, they find their forever homes. That's what's one of the Gelfans told me. In fact, one of their mother dogs got adopted by their next door neighbor who lost her husband to cancer, and the dog has been her lifeline. So they see the dog all the time. So There's a lot of ways that you can foster and know that you are just one step in a process and in an amazing process. And you can still, I have another woman I know. She went out and her foster dog, she was in Texas and her foster dog got adopted in New England. She flew up there to visit him. And then the adopter went on this extended vacation. So she stayed at her home and dog sat the dog and kind of did it as like a house swap vacation. So there's all sorts of incredible stories. It doesn't mean, farewell forever. And of course, there's adopting an animal, and that is huge too. Um, every day you wait just increases the number of animals at risk. And you might be surprised, especially nowadays, the animals that you can find at your local shelters. A lot of them are seeing dogs that you often associate with having to go to a breeder. There are doodles, there are French bulldogs, there's golden retrievers, there's puppies. A lot of rescue groups even specialize in different breeds. There are doodle rescues, Bernese Mountain Dogs rescues, but French bulldog rescues, golden retriever lab rescues. You pick a breed, and there's a rescue group. And a lot of times, rescues who are specialized in certain breeds, they take in dogs from shelters, of course, but also sometimes families get divorced. And the rescue that I volunteer for, the family got divorced. The mom and dad went their separate ways. No one could keep the dog, and so the rescue took the dog back, and the dog's going to be posted for adoption soon. So there's a million reasons a dog who's a great, I shouldn't always say dogs, I'm talking a lot about dogs, but there's a lot of great animals who end up in shelters and rescue groups, who are great, and we're just kind of a victim of circumstance. And of course, we can't say this enough: spaying and neutering your animals, your dogs and your cats, that is huge, because one brief encounter between an unneutered male dog out looking for love and an unspayed female dog can result in a dozen unexpected dogs or cats. And shelters are saying that they have tons of people coming to their doors with unwanted litters. People are dropping off puppies and kittens in boxes at the shelter gates. It's really tough. So definitely spay and neuter. I know in some areas of the country it's really pricey. Sometimes to get your dog spayed and neutered, there's some organizations that do low cost spay and neuter. You can kind of Google that to see what's in your neck of the woods. Sometimes certain zip codes, there's special programs for people who live in certain zip codes to help, spay and neuter their dogs and cats. It's just, of the utmost importance. And I do kind of want to go on a small tangent here about spaying and neutering. With both male and female dogs, and being in the rescue, I have seen this a lot. If you wait to spay a female dog, they are more likely to get mammary cancer. And the rescue that I volunteer for, we have two dogs that were not spayed, I think, until they were after like 6 or 7 years old. And they both have mammary cancer now, and they had to have the mammary chains removed. And the cancer spread to their body. One of the dogs has spread to a lymph node. The other one, it definitely has spread as well. Now they're seeing oncologists. And so, that dog's future is uncertain. And if they were spayed, that likely would not have been the same risk level. Same thing for male dogs too. We have gotten a lot of older male dogs in that were never neutered, and they have testicular cancer. So when you read, stats and information, how not spaying and neutering could result in cancer, it's really true. And I have seen it firsthand, and it's it's so sad because you have these wonderful animals and and now they have cancer because they were never spayed or neutered, and they their future is uncertain now. So spay and neuter your pets, just like Bob Barker used to say. There's also, other ways to help out. People drive dogs. Sometimes dogs, Texas, for example, we have we'll save dogs from a Houston shelter and they'll have to go to a foster in Austin or vice versa. Volunteering to give animals rides from, let's say, the shelter to a foster home, or even a foster who might be fostering a pet, and the pet may have a veterinary appointment or an appointment to be spayed or neutered, but they are stuck in work meetings that day. If there's a volunteer that said, hey, I can pick up the dog at 8 a.m. and bring them to the appointment and then bring them back to you, things like that are huge lifesavers for dogs as well. There's even private pilots who fly animals from a shelter in one area to another region, or even across the country, where a rescue group, adopter, or a foster parent is waiting to give them a second chance. So there's definitely so many ways to help out. It just kind of, you need to figure out, what is the role for me? Do I want to be the person that goes into the shelter and works hands-on with the animals? Do I want to be the person that goes in and takes those, pictures and videos? And let me tell you, just having a smartphone and the ability, a little bit of technical know-how, unlike me when I tried to call in for the podcast tonight, taking those cute videos and pictures of animals and then having those posted, that is such a lifeline. I can't even tell you what a huge importance that makes, because you are getting the picture and video and a little information about that animal out there. And some animal control facilities and shelters are so overwhelmed, they do not have the time to do that. There are shelters out there in some communities in the country that still practice what's kind of called catch and kill animal control, where, they catch the animal, they put them in the kennel, and if nobody calls the shelter and, whatever the state's rules are, in 48 hours and 3 days and 7 days, they can euthanize them. They don't have to try to find them a home. They don't have to take the pictures and put any effort in them. If you live in a community like that, I would definitely try to start getting that changed. If they do, no outreach or anything like that. And you can kind of see, find out what your animal control facility or the local shelter is, and check and see, do they have a Facebook or a social media page to post about the animals in need? Do they have a website, that's updated, that shows the animals in the shelter? Because it's just as important that they show the animals pictures and some information the moment they come in. And even your neighboring communities, let's say your dog runs out your door while you're bringing in groceries, or your cat gets out. They don't know town and city lines. They could end up a mile away in a different town's animal control facility. So, that's why it's so important for these facilities to have an updated social media presence, an updated website, with like almost real time. Like, we just got this golden retriever in, is he yours? That kind of thing. You can also check to see if your local shelter are they posting on adoption sites like Pet Finder or Adopt a Pet, to post animals. What effort are they making? How do they market and inform the public that these animals are there in their facility? If you can't find any advertising or any marketing, or their website hasn't been updated for 2 years, that definitely might signal a problem. If no one knows an animal in a shelter exists, how can they be rescued or adopted? So that is something that you also want to check in with a shelter. You can definitely also pay a visit to the shelter. Do they let the public in? It's a red flag if they will not let you in. That is definitely a red flag. If you go pay a visit to the shelter and it's scary and deplorable and, it's filthy or there's issues, take some pictures and videos and document this and go to your local elected officials and or go to the city council meetings, go to the town hall meetings, the county board kind of meetings, and say, hey, I went down and paid a visit to my local shelter, and this is what I saw: overcrowded, filthy kennels, dogs without water, cats in terrible, conditions. So, you want to kind of take a look and document that. Are animals being kept in dirty conditions? Are the cages too small? Are they malnourished? Can you document these conditions for a couple of days, a week straight? Keep recording, because visual confirmation of this is definitely invaluable. The more pictures and videos, the better. Now, if you really find a problem and you are not getting any response from the animal control agency, your town officials, that kind of thing, go to the media, email and call the media outlets that get your local TV and your local paper on. All you have to do is, find out the name of the station, if the call letters are KGAN, just Google contact KGAN TV, contact News 7, with the town, whatever they're called. And websites now on media outlets are pretty good about having some contact info up there, because they want story ideas. They very much rely, I'm a member of the media, so they very much rely on people reaching out to them who are ready to expose things. So, you can look up who your favorite anchor is or investigative reporter, and tell them what you've observed. Tell them if you have pictures, video, and documentation. That might generate some more interest. So, definitely start raising the alarm bells and the red flag. You might again want to start out just in the friendly way, because that's usually the best way to go about it. But I've definitely seen things escalate, and there are shelters that don't have that mentality, and that's really an outdated, terrible mentality to have. You also, if another thing that you can do is go to social media, make posts and just write out very concisely, like stick to the facts. I went down to my local shelter. This is what I saw. I told the animal control officer. They did not care. I went to my town council meeting. They didn't care. I spoke to the mayor. He or she didn't care. We need to change this. If a town council meeting, or city council or county board gets mobbed with angry people, they're gonna listen. It might get to the point where you need to make a stink, and that's okay too. But definitely stick to the facts. Write things in a clear, chronological, and concise kind of way. These are just some of the different ways that you can kind of make a difference. I have a website, watchdogmary.com, and there is a tab at the top called Check Your Shelter. And that has a whole bunch of tips, from making public records requests, how to document what's going on in a local shelter, how to reveal your findings, how you can help your community, that kind of thing. So I just kind of want to stop there. I know we're coming up on the hour mark now. Just want to see if anyone has any questions or comments.
Okay, Watchdog Mary, we can go over the 7 o'clock if you'd like, so we don't have to rush. Okay, that's what I've been doing. On Blog Talk Radio, I was going just an hour, but these shows here, I mean, I could put them up to 2 hours. So we don't have to rush. All right, so And then also on Blog Talk when I had it, I had the hour shows, but I could have went up to 2 hours, which I should have done, or an hour and a half even. But now I got this, so if we have to go over, we go over. It's no it's no big deal. Okay, because it's always an honor to have you on here and so very informative and all the information you're giving. I mean, it's just amazing. And everyone, like I said, after the show gets downloaded, it's going to be published all over the place. So you can listen and share 24/7. Podbean, Voices Carry for Animals .podbean.com, and also on PodServe.com, Animal Advocates Radio. It's going to get out there, Watchdog Mary. I mean, the word is out there. This is like major stuff here. So
Mhm.
it's like a total of 27 other podcast websites is going to go on. So that's amazing, and I'm doing the happy mama bear dance. It's awesome. But if anybody has any questions, Mama Cat, did you want to speak? Or because you know all about Mama Cat, former guest, and she takes care of over 100 cats in colonies, and they see her coming, and I tell you, they do standing ovations when they bring her that food and water. She take good care of them. Mama Cat, that's if you would press that microphone icon or the phone icon, and I'll bring you on in. It's always a pleasure. Hey, Mama Cat, how are you?
I am
Meow.
doing wonderful. How are you today?
All right. So glad to see you again, and thanks for all your support. I love when the guests, former guests show up and interact, and questions is coming from the callers, and this chat room is so awesome asking questions, or whatever it is, everyone. There was some get connected this evening, but I will look into that. After the show, after I get it edited and published. So, but I will look into it. But go ahead, Mama Cat. Always a pleasure. Yep.
Hey, Watchdog Mary. How are you doing this evening?
I'm well, Mama Cat. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Um,
Good.
I agree with everything you're saying, of course. Nothing you said I disagree with. But like you were saying, there's so many different things that people can volunteer to do, and we've got the Girl Scouts and the Brownies on 4th of July. They go to our shelter and they sit. Each little girl picks out somebody to sit and read to so that the
Oh,
animals aren't afraid while the fireworks are all going off.
oh, that's so nice.
And it's just simple little things like that, that people can do to help out at their local shelters. Most of the workers don't have time to do that sort of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And then we've got another shelter in Canyon City. Excellent shelter down there. They ask for donations of lazy boy chairs or any sort of stuffed chair, and they put those chairs in the rooms with the dogs so that they've got a little piece of home to curl up on. And the the look on them animals' faces, mostly the dogs, is just priceless. It's like all of a sudden they've got a remembrance of what a home is, and it's something so simple as a chair.
Yeah, that's amazing. And there's just so many just ingenious ways to help shelters.
Absolutely. And we're all not good at it, doing everything, but each one of us, if we just kind of all stick together, which we're trying to do, we can make a difference for those in the shelters and maybe take them for walks and get them seen, take them for weekends. And like you said, maybe your neighbors will fall in love with them. We even have some of our police that will pick up some of the shelter animals and drive around with them for a day so that
Oh, that's
people
so
can see
cool.
them. Yeah.
That is so cool. Yeah,
I mean,
I never thought about that.
there's a lot of ways.
Yeah.
People have to think outside the box.
Exactly, exactly. And also kind of see like what works for your community.
I think making TikTok videos of all the animals at the shelter is a great idea as well. I mean, if they're going to already be on TikTok making videos, they might as well make some of the dogs.
Exactly, exactly. There's so many digital creators out there, and they're so some of them are so talented.
Exactly. And they've got the followers, you know. I mean,
Mhm.
some of these influencers have millions of followers. And if, they'd share an animal from a shelter once a week, that would make a big difference.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, you see so many celebrities, helping now and things like that, and it's just great.
Right.
Another thing is I was talking to some of the shelters out in California who took in the Los Angeles area, who took in a lot of animals during the horrible wildfires in the beginning of the year. And
Right.
they still have a lot of animals that need homes, tragic stories where, people, knew their dog or cat ended up at a shelter, but then they lost their homes in the fire and they just, weren't able to rebound and get, another home that allowed pets. And so, if you are in a community that recently had a disaster, whether it's a wildfire or floods or tornadoes, chances are those local shelters probably are inundated with animals and they definitely need help as well.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And the rescues, they go into those areas and try and trap those animals because you got to realize those animals are scared to death. I
Hmm.
mean, if they survived, they're a lot of them were burnt. A lot of them, their fur was all singed off of them,
Yeah.
burns on their little feet, and they're hiding. They're not coming out looking for stuff. They're hiding until it gets dark. And
Yeah.
so there's been many rescues up till all hours of the night out there trying to
Hmm.
reunite those animals with their owners. One was famous, Chris Kelly. She lost everything and never, I don't know if they ever found her cat, but
Oh,
there's a lot of
wow.
people looking for them. So yeah, and it's everybody from all walks of life that are out there
Uh-huh.
trying to help, and that's what we need.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Yeah, and if somebody out there is, an influencer or a celebrity, the rescues and shelters would love to have them help them, get the word out.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, it takes a couple seconds for one of those influencers to do a little story about a cat or a dog. I mean, they're on TikTok all day usually anyway. So, I mean, we can use all the help we can get.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like you have a lot of creative programs going on. That's so exciting.
Yeah, well, if you keep doing everything the same old way, it gets boring and people get bored with it and people lose interest
Yeah.
with it. You got to keep switching it up.
Yep, yep. I love it. I love the spirit. You know what I mean? Of being able to say like, hey, yeah, we gotta do something different. Because a lot of communities, are opposed to change.
They really are.
That sounds wonderful.
Now we just need to get a lot of the vets on board to help us.
I know, people, the vets say, everybody loves to kind of, oh, the vets are so expensive in the animal hospitals. That they are, but they're saying, that their prices of everything are going up as well. Whether
Oh
it's,
yeah.
the rent or the electricity supplies. Definitely they're affected by this as well.
Oh yeah. I'm fortunate. I have a vet. He's an older guy, and he does just about all of my vetting for me, um, free. All I do is I pay for any medical medicines because he's got to be able to account for all the medications.
Yeah.
And he does my spay and neuters for nothing. And
Oh, that's lovely.
yeah, I'm really fortunate. Every time I bring him a cat, he tells me, Ray, how many times have I told you I don't do feral cats? And I look at him and I say, hold on, let me pull out my phone. I can tell you. Like 52 now.
Oh yeah, yeah. The rescue that I volunteer with, we have lots of animal hospitals and vets that do offer us discounts. We try to use the low cost clinics and things like that too, but there are places that, at least try to help a bit. And we're
Yeah.
so appreciative.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when Best Friends was up, no, it was Dumb Friends League. When they were up in Denver, they used to do all my spay and neuters. And I was doing 50 a day. And I'd bring them up in the morning, drop them off, and then pick them up in the evening. And it was great. And then before COVID, it was before COVID, um, they lowered me down to only 25 a day, which is still, that's still acceptable. And then after COVID, of course, they stopped. So I had to go back to my vet and have him do them again.
Oh wow.
But Dumb Friends League did, I'll bet they probably did probably 1,000 cats for me, at least,
Wow. That's amazing.
if not more, but around 1,000, I'd say.
Wow. That's
And that's a
wonderful.
big help.
Oh yeah. If you can get the spay and neuter covered, that is so helpful.
Yeah. Well, and like my Noelle kitty, I got a call about a cat. She was 100 miles away from me. So I tried to find somebody to go get her. I never did find anybody. So I went and got her, and she needed surgery. And I took her to my vet, and he had never done this type of surgery. And it was an extended, really long, detailed surgery, $4,800.
Oh wow.
So I'm like, and I'm no different than anybody else that's faced with that type of medical cost,
Yeah,
for an
yeah.
animal. Only difference was this was a Spitfire feral that the only thing she wanted to do was rip my face off. And, some people they told me, well, why would you waste that much money on a cat you'll never hold?
Yeah.
And, to be honest, you do have to weigh those. And her recovery was going to be really long after the surgery. And,
Yeah, those
sometimes you do have to weigh those. But I was like, look, I'm not in the business of trapping and killing. Okay.
yeah.
Mine is rescue, saving. And so my vet covered all the costs for her except for
Wow.
the medication. And the deal was that he had never done that surgery. He had read about it, but
Uh-huh.
he'd never seen it done nor done it. And his deal was he wanted to bring medical students in to
Oh,
view
wow.
to
Yeah.
view the surgery and then videotape it so that it can be passed on. Because
Oh,
like he
that's
said,
wonderful.
he's 70 something and has never seen it done.
Wow.
But
That worked out well.
most people can't afford 5 grand for a cat. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
money,
Yeah, definitely.
But she's doing great. I still have her.
Oh, that's great.
She sleeps on my pillow now, and she don't rip my face off near as much.
Oh, good you guys made your peace.
Yep,
They all deserve it if we can do it.
Yeah,
that's right.
definitely.
Got to at least try, right? I mean, we can't give up. Never give up hope. Because
Uh,
there, all lives matter, including all the animals. So we got to do what's right and help them out because they can't help themselves.
yeah,
They're defenseless and helpless and voiceless, and so we got to be their defenders, their animal protectors, and
yeah. I
because
couldn't imagine giving up. I just couldn't.
no, no,
I think it would rip my heart out. It would kill me.
Yeah.
yep. They would. Because I know, I do my best not only just on this podcast, but, out on the social media, X and Facebook and LinkedIn, try to help them as much as I can, and admins
Oh,
on pages and groups. And, I'm a busy bee, and I'm fast, so that makes it better. It's not that difficult. Within 1 hour, you should see how much I get done. And it makes my head spin. I got to keep up a website, two YouTube channels, all this stuff. But I'm fast, and I've
you
learned
are.
it. So my hands are flying. The fingers, let your fingers do the walking. mine do the mine do the running. Yep. So we cannot give up, everyone. Whatever you can do, every effort counts. Press that share button out there. Get it in newsfeed. Visit my Voices Carry for Animals support group. There's a lot of animals on death row in there. And all the any cross posters listening, please, and give them all big shout outs because they're out there working hard, relentless, trying to get these animals saved, to safety or rescued, adopted. I can see it going through newsfeed. So thank you all for all you're doing. It means so much. I even admin on a group, Voice for Animals. That's where I first started on Facebook. And they made me an admin on there. There's animals on there too that need, that are on death row, and it's got a lot of followers and everything, but it needs some more attention. The activity in there is down. The shares are down. Just that's all over Facebook where I'm in. So that's not good for the animals. I know
No.
Facebook has had its better days out there, and I know that for a fact. But these animals still need our help. They can't we cannot ignore it or look the other way. So, I try even inviting friends to the Facebook groups and, hey, share this, whatever you can do, because it only takes a second to press share, share, share,
Yeah.
and it goes in your news feed. It's not like I'm asking you to run around the block 3 times, all right? You're sitting there and it can't get no easier than help to make changes from your own home, your phone, your computer, your copier. It can't, just like this podcast. I'm going live from my home. How more better can that be, right? From an iPad. So we have to keep it up and not, disappear. If you need a break, take a break. Come back, get refreshed. I have to do that myself, and then come back stronger and better, because that's what it takes, everyone. Teamwork out there. We can't, none of us can do it alone, and neither can these animals. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that's really important to bring up too, is taking a little break. The animal
Yep.
rescue burnout is real, and the number of animals in need sometimes is overwhelming, and sometimes you do kind of have to take a little bit of a break, a little sanity break, or sometimes something tragic happens. You tried saving an animal and they were so sick. They died. We saved a dog once from a shelter. That was one of those cases where the dog was literally skin and bones, just emaciated. And we rushed them to the animal hospital, and the dog died the next day. It just went on for too long, and sadly the dog passed away. It wasn't our fault. The circumstances leading up to the moment we saw the dog, we saved them. But that hit everybody really hard because we thought, yay, we got this dog, okay, he's at the animal hospital. And then we got a call the next day that he had passed away overnight. And I think everybody had to take a little break for a day or so after that happened. So it's really important because a lot of rescuers, and I've had people in the rescue say, you know what, this is just so hard. I can't do this anymore. And you're dealing with people's personalities as well. You're trying to help the animals, but you're dealing with different kinds of personalities. Sometimes you're dealing with people who surrender the animal to the rescue, and they aren't the nicest person, they they haven't always treated the animal well, but you want to get the animal into the rescue and you have to deal with them. So sometimes you have to turn people down, um, to be fosters and adopters, because we had a guy once a man applied to be a foster, and he, the application says, where will the dog be kept? And he wrote outside in my backyard on a chain, and and we thought we were being, punked. And so I think I called him and I said, sir, I'm so sorry, we can't have you keep the dog outside on a chain. And he's like, well, are they better off, in a shelter being killed, or better off, in my backyard on a chain? And I thought, well, there's an interesting dilemma, huh? And so we did deny that man, and we did save the dog. So everything worked out well. But you deal with people. The adoption coordinators sometimes get horrible applications, and they deal with, they have to deny them, and then people write back horrible emails, or like, what do you mean? And that kind of thing. So there are definitely challenges sometimes, and so that's why it's just so important to kind of take a little mental health break.
Oh yeah, they'll do you right because I've had to do it, many times, and I came back stronger. And I came, everyone inspires me to keep going, being great team players, and that's what it takes. Everyone, I couldn't be more happy. I mean, just a big shout out to everyone out there that helps me to promote this show, from X to Facebook to LinkedIn, the Facebook pages that do, the X pages that do, the followers. I mean, that is what I call total teamwork because I'm a one woman operation. I promote it, I produce it, I host, a schedule, you name it. And the only thing I need help with is promoting it, and I get all that help. A big shout out to fans for animal rights out there. They've been there for many years, and I mean, this list is huge. And if I didn't have them, I wouldn't be where I'm at today because this show has been a total success, and with all the great guests and the callers and the listeners. And so that's why it's keep going. At the end of June, everyone, it'll be 11 years for Voices Carry for Animals. Isn't that wonderful?
Wow, congratulations.
Yes, 11 years, 163 shows on TS Radio Network. Marty Oakley, she sadly passed away, my buddy, April 1st of 2023. She was a super team player and friend, and she helped me to get Animal Advocates Radio together, Voices Carry for Animals, set it up and on my own. And I was like, this is wonderful. And we stayed in contact after that from March, until April when she passed away. So we worked great together. And that's what it takes. And I always, may she rest in peace. But with this Podbean, we got this started up now. I was down and out when I found Blog Talk Radio was closing down. But I had to pick myself back up. I took a break and I said, I'm not shutting down Voices Carry for Animals for nothing. So I had that attitude. I'm going to do it, and I did it. And here we are, 2 months, and this is wonderful. Love it. Yes.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's just, I'm going to keep going, Watchdog Mary. We got Watchdog Mary, Mama Cat, and also Mama Bear. What a team. A dog, a cat, and a bear.
I love it. I love it.
Yep, I do too. And I have my other nickname is Pitbull Debbie and Mustang Debbie, the horse. So I had one when I first started out was the Dominator. So I like that one too. So, but anyway, ladies, I'm going to go ahead and close it down and get this edited and published. And Watchdog Mary, I'm going to send it to you also, okay, the new link, because once it gets out, we can still publish it, everywhere. And you can all listen 24/7. The ones who missed it or not want to listen to it later, there's no rush after the show's downloaded or any of them. Go on Voices Carry for Animals.podbean.com. and all the shows are listed on there. You can share them at the bottom. You can listen to them right there, and also from my website, voicescaryforanimals.com. Also on podserve.com, Animal Advocates Radio. So there's so many ways to listen to the show and get it out there. Because that's my goal, to attract more action takers, active. But Watchdog Mary, you keep all that information, what you download and everything. How you start up a free account on Podbean, followed and subscribe to Voices Carry for Animals, and then when you came over to the app, because this is come a live stream, everyone, from Podbean Podcast and Player. Okay, so then you could go over there, free download. Okay, on Podbean Podcast app and Player, and then all you got to do is follow Voices Carry for Animals podcast, and you are in. And we are, like Mama Cat says, strength in numbers, okay? Power in numbers. Watchdog Mary, you're always welcome back. And looking forward to another great show. Once you walk through the door of Voices Carry for Animals, you are family, okay? And family always sticks together and works together, and there's so many former guests has come back and even come over to this podcast, which inspired me, because I'm glad none of you ditched me and said, "Forget you, I'm not learning that podcast."
Well, thank you so much for having me again.
Oh, it's always my pleasure, Watchdog Mary, always, and looking forward to come on again, because I like to keep it out there, keep it the more exposure the better, not just have a guest on one time and that's it, and that's the end of it, So we will do it. And everyone, next week, if you please join in, we have Keith Dane. Want to welcome him back from Humane World for Animals. Okay, he's also, they're all great speakers. I've always had great shows. Everyone, I can't think of one bad one. So that's a big plus right there. They are very informative, educational, bringing awareness, prevention, how you can help out, things that you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So, but I want to thank Mama Cat too. Mama Cat, you rock, Catwoman. That's Mama Cat. Meow.
All right, you both have a great night, and thank
And
you
you
for
too.
having me.
Hey, and you too, Watchdog Mary. Everybody, Mary Schwager. Oh, before we get, can you give your website out again, and also your Facebook page to the audience?
Sure, I'm
Okay.
on all social media at. Sorry, my puppy is squeaking her tennis ball, and every time I walk away, she follows me squeaking it. Be
Adorable.
quiet. Yeah,
Yeah.
forgive the squeaking in the background. On social media, it's Watchdog Mary, and then my website is watchdogmary.com.
Okay, great. And are you on any other social media, like on any YouTube channels or anything like
I
that?
haven't done YouTube for a while, but Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I'm
Okay.
not super active on all of them, but yeah,
Okay.
whatever your favorite is where you can find me.
That's right. But another great show there, Watchdog Mary, and can't thank you enough. And everyone, I hope you all have a wonderful and peaceful and relaxing evening. And please, keep coming back, spreading the word. Tell more of your family and your friends and your neighbors, your coworkers about this show, because it's unlimited. Okay, so the more we get out there and get the attention, the more action takers we get. Okay, and that's what the goal is. Yeah, listeners is great, but the action takers is even better, right, Watchdog Mary?
Absolutely.
Yep. So everyone, thanks for tuning in, and hope to see you next week. And remember, we got to get Mama Cat in here. Okay, Mama Cat. Please press the invite button so you can do your paw in hand. Okay. I haven't done that, but if you're still listening, paw in hand, united we stand against all animal cruelty and neglect across the land. Good night, everyone,
Okay.
and hope you Yes, thank you so much. And may God bless you all. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.
Oh, there's Mama Cat. I missed you, Mama Cat. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
It's okay. we you we will do it, right?
We will.
We can do it, everyone. You know, we can do it.
Stay strong, everybody.
They stay strong, and teamwork is the key. Okay.
It is.
Yes, it is.
Good
So
night,
we
everybody.
good night. Good night, everyone.